questions. Front row.
Speaker Johnson, the president said, possibly in jest, that if he were Tom Homan, he would arrest Gavin Newsom. Do you believe that Newsom should face consequences in a legal way?
Look, that's not my lane. I'm not going to give you legal analysis on whether Gavin Newsom should be arrested, but he ought to be tarred and feathered, I'll say that. I mean, look, he's standing in the way of the administration and the carrying out of federal law, right? He is applauding the bad guys and standing in the way of the good guys. He is trying to, he's a participant, an accomplice in our federal law enforcement agents being not just disrespected but assaulted. This is a serious problem, and the governor is now filing a lawsuit against the president. What a joke. Do your job, man. That's what I tell Gavin Newsom. Do your job. Stop working on your rebranding and be a governor. Stand up for the rule of law. He's not doing that. So I don't know what the ultimate measure will be there, but I know that in the interim time, the President of the United States is showing real leadership, and we're not going to allow L.A. to burn. We've seen this movie before, right? This thing gets out of hand real quickly, especially in a big city like that. And if local and state officials are unwilling or unable to do their job, the President of the United States will do his, and we support that fully. Yes, ma'am, in the middle.
What is the administration's response to Mexican President Sheinbaum's refusal to condemn the riots in L.A., and does this affect President Trump's relationship with Sheinbaum?
I don't know. You have to ask the White House that. I mean, I gotta handle our affairs over here. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is your reaction to Congresswoman Maxine Waters repeatedly saying that there has been no violence in the LA riots? And do you believe that Democrats are making a mistake by not talking about what's really going on?
Clearly, the Democrats are making a mistake by taking the wrong side here, and I'm just going to, in my southern gentlemanly way, say bless her heart to Maxine Waters. I don't even know how to comment on Maxine Waters anymore. It's madness. I'm going to be charitable and leave it right there. Yes, sir. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So new reporting suggests that no tax on tips and no tax on overtime could be scaled back from the One Big Beautiful Bill if they aren't viewed as pro-growth. Have you talked to some senators that are skeptical of that, like Senator Johnson? And you've said before that there isn't a plan B, but if that does come back to the House without these provisions, is it time to go back to the drawing board?
Well, look, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime are big promises the president made to the people, and we all echoed that on the campaign trail. I've talked to my good friend, Senator Ron Johnson, multiple times, most recently, I think it was last night or night before last, it was on Sunday, because he was on some shows and I was on some shows and we were comparing notes. And I told him, look, we all agree with our Senate colleagues who believe we need to cut more and more government waste, fraud, and abuse, obviously. But I told him, reminded him of the reality of the delicate balance we have in the House and the fact that we have a very broad caucus and we have, I've got 170 additional personalities to deal with than they do in the Senate, and it takes a while to meet this equilibrium point. So, look, I think the promise on no tax on tips and no tax on overtime is very important to the president. It's very important to hardworking Americans. And what we're so proud of our reconciliation bill is that it is truly geared and written for middle and lower class earning Americans, hardworking Americans who are trying to feed their families and make ends meet. They are the ones that are going to benefit from this bill. The Republican Party is the party of the working class, and we are demonstrating that with our legislation. And no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, for some people, they may not think that's a big thing, but for hardworking folks, a lot of them, millions and millions of Americans, that is a big thing to them, and I think it's an important promise for us to keep.
Last question, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Switching gears a bit, the FACE Act. It's right now being marked up in the Judiciary Committee. Plan to bring it to the floor, and the importance for the Republican Party and leadership of bringing this to the floor.
Yeah, look, it's a big commitment of ours. Applaud Chairman Jim Jordan and the Judiciary. He always does a great job handling that. It's a big priority. We have to protect free speech. We've got to protect what are actual peaceful protests, and we got to stand for our core principles. I think all that's wrapped up in that legislation, and I expect it'll go well, and I expect we'll pass it through the House when it comes through committee. So, one last question. Yeah.
Speaker Johnson, just running back to the LA protests.
Yes.
Is there a red line for congressional Republicans regarding President Trump's use of executive authority to, say, deploy federal law enforcement or use 700 Marines? Is there a situation, say, if he invoked the Insurrection Act or directed federal law enforcement to arrest Governor Newsom, that would make Congress step in at a check?
Look, I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals, but I've said very clearly, I was sitting next to the President at the White House yesterday when some of these questions were asked. He is fully within his authority right now to do what he is doing, and we have to maintain order. It's the number one job. Think of it, y'all. The number one job of government is to protect the citizenry from foreign threats and domestic threats. And federal law enforcement is doing their job. Those are the heroes, and we've got to protect them. And federal employees as well, and federal buildings and property. We're not going to let violent criminals destroy the property of U.S. taxpayers. President Trump has put his hand on the table and said, not on my watch, and we applaud that. So we're standing with him. Thank you.